Well, firstly, thank you, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be back in South Africa. I get to use some slang, which I haven't been able to use for 6 years. I've been living in South Africa. You're going to hear me say bucky just now, and everyone in the room will know what that means. For the rest of you, it's a pickup truck. Okay. You've heard today from many of my colleagues and friends who daily astound me with the knowledge that they have, with the stuff that they do seemingly effortlessly. I've been working for Geotab, or being involved with Geotab, for just over 19 years now. Originally starting as a reseller here in Africa. I moved to the UK 5 or 6 years ago to join Geotab Europe. I've been honored and privileged to be able to work for this incredible organization. And one thing that I'm in an enjoyable, fairly unique position, is that I'm able to take the knowledge and experience I've had being a customer and a reseller, and now on the other side of the fence, working with Geotab, putting that information together. Because one of the things that we often fall into the trap is we know everything that we're doing, but how does that affect you? Okay? One of the things I do regularly, and I make a conscious effort to do this regularly, is ask the question to myself, so what? Right? How can this possibly affect me? If I'm a Geotab customer, what changes is this going to make in my life? What difference does it make that a vehicle in New York or Toronto or London, right, has this magic thing that does this, whatever that it does? Also, how can I affect that? How can I take advantage of that? And the answer is very simple. Every single one of you, every single client, every single user, you're an integral part of the Geotab family. It's all about you. We've heard a couple of people talking about that today, and something that we're reinforcing as much as we possibly can. Any Geotab user or customer, and very importantly, you don't actually have to be a Geotab user or customer to take advantage of this. You've got full access to everything that we know, almost everything that we know. It's available on our website, geotab.com. You can go there at any time, search through it. There's all the forums, there's the training videos, training documents, literally everything that from simple, how do I log in, through to creating custom rules, creating custom reports, to the more in-depth stuff, using the SDK, taking part of our big data searches. We want you to use the data. Alternately, of course, some people are not comfortable with that, or maybe you don't know what question to actually ask. Logical first step, ask your reseller. He's the guy that should be supporting you in the field, and definitely they'll be able to answer a good majority of it. There's going to be questions that they don't know. They'll come along, and obviously they'll approach then Geotab Africa, assuming that you're outside of South Africa, you've got a reseller there. Geotab Africa, I believe, one of the most competent of our resellers globally, and I say that probably a little bit prejudiced because I've worked with a team for so many years. They will be able to solve most of your problems, but again, if they don't know, they're going to reach out to the Geotab global team, either solution support or solution engineering. And solution engineering, the team that you've met, many of them, and you've heard some of them speak today, you're going to meet some of us later on, their precise focus is exactly what the title suggests. They're engineers. They're taking our known products, working with customers or partners or finding other partners if need be, to put that together to engineer a solution to whatever your problem is. We make quite a bold statement, and I like to do it. I say almost. We can solve almost anything. We've had some pretty amazing questions asked over the years, so we have to clarify and say almost everything. We're pretty good at it. There's going to be some stuff that we can't do. A nice example that's very close to my heart, because I was involved with this project from the beginning, British Antarctic Survey. British Antarctic Survey, obviously based in Britain, approached one of our resellers with a question very simple, should have been very simple. We wanted to monitor our vehicles in the field. And the field for them is in the Antarctic. It's one of the harshest environments in the world. Temperature ranges in summer from -5 to -15 degrees C. In winter, it falls to -50. -50, what does that mean? Exposure to that temperature in an unsafe, if you're out of the vehicle, you're going to die in about 6 minutes. In winter, 3 months of total darkness. There is no sunlight for 3 months. At best in winter, help is 2 weeks away. The only way in is by sea or by air. In winter, because of the storms and everything else involved, you can't get a plane in the air. The closest point is Argentina. There's no GSM. Sorry, Vodafone and MTN, where are you? There's no GSM in the Antarctic. Obviously, very, very limited internet connectivity. That's a problem. So, what do? Our reseller had some ideas, but he needed help. Knew the idea was what we could do with it, approached us. The challenge, first initial challenge was how do we connect to those vehicles? As you can imagine, the vehicles working in that environment, not exactly straight out of off the highways machines. So we worked with the teams, manufacturers in Germany and in Western Canada, because again, fortunately, Canada have quite cold weather, and we know some people who have experience with that. We had to build and source some modifications to our standard Go 7 devices. Changes to harnesses, some insulation, all sorts of exciting things that did that. More than that, we also had to work with our solution engineering team, creating custom reports, creating custom maps, creating some fancy firmware to deal with it. Anyway, result, 3 months later, about 3-4 months, those units flew via British Antarctic, so they flew them down to the southern point of Argentina. They went by ship to the Antarctic and allowed us to be able to say, quite honestly, we're the first commercial telematics solution to put it live to position in the Antarctic. We're currently, and still, the only global telematics solution with units active on all 7 continents. What does that mean? Okay, global vehicles. We all know the big names: Ford, Mercedes, BMW, Toyota, Cummins. We have some of the delegates with us today, hopefully. Jordan mentioned it earlier, Colin touched on it as well. We want to work with those partners. We realize that there's devices in there, we want to try and monetize it. Current OEM partnerships that we have: Ford in North America and Europe, Cummins globally, General Motors in North America, Volvo Trucks North America, Mercedes-Benz in Central America. That Central America one is quite interesting. Slightly different application. Every Mercedes-Benz Sprinter sold in Mexico comes with a Geotab device from the manufacturer, which is quite a nice opportunity to have. Then some other ones that you're never going to heard of. If anybody in the room has heard of Elinta or Teva, I'll be really impressed. Elinta is a company based in Lithuania, in what used to be part of Russia, is now part of Eastern Europe. Teva is based in the UK. Fortunately, coincidentally, quite close to our offices. Both of these companies are relatively new, and what they do is they'll take your standard standard diesel or petrol vehicle and convert it to a full electric or hybrid vehicle. The problem for them, not for us, is that because they start up and they're making it up, many of these OEMs are not following the OBD2 standards, because an electric vehicle doesn't have to follow OBD by law. OBD was designed primarily for emissions-based reporting. Electric vehicle doesn't have emissions. So what we're seeing is these guys are, in the excitement of developing and building these technologies, very messy in terms of CAN data. Working with us, fortunately, the customer that one of our global customers got us to talk to these guys. And what we've seen successfully happen is they changed their entire vehicle architecture, their entire CAN network, and the architecture of what they're doing with the data, following our guidelines. Not to say that we forced them to do it. It was a voluntary thing. They could see that what we're laying out and the specifications of working with the J1939 network that we have, the level of security, integrity, and the way we implement that data. Suddenly we're having these OEMs starting to follow us. And it echoes with what we're trying to say, is that Geotab is the go-to. We're setting a standard of what people should be doing. This is a very powerful thing, and we're seeing that more and more. We've got these relationships coming up. We're working with a couple of smaller OEMs in the UK at the minute. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to mention them because we have an NDA in place. Where are we? What we see happen as well is those fleets are out there. Okay, very important. Toyota Hilux, Ford Focus, BMW 3 Series, VW Golf. VW Golf still made here in South Africa, if I remember. BMW 5 Series still made here in South Africa, exported to Europe. Toyota Hilux, manufactured here, sold to Europe, globally, in fact, Australia as well. I was involved a couple of years ago with a project, the Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, which is a natural gas pipeline joining the gas lines coming in from Ukraine and Turkey and joining them into the network in the Western Europe. Involved with the fleet, working in some exciting places in northern Greece and Albania and Serbia, and exciting places like that. And when we were training the guys on the front, training the installers, and what we saw was there, that picture was actually the warehouse where the vehicles came in off the ship. Toyota Hilux Buckies. Oh, so good to say Bucky. A Toyota Hilux Bucky. All of them identical. Same make, same model, same specification, most of them the same color. When we looked at the VIN numbers, and the VIN number, the vehicle identity number, side by side, 3 vehicles. One made in South Africa, one made in Japan, one made in Thailand. Exciting for me because I went, oh, South Africa. We're seeing you in Albania, which is great, right? What we thought and what we assumed at the time was this is great. We're now seeing that this vehicle is a global vehicle. No matter where you are in the world, we know how to connect to it. We know what data you're going to get from it. This is the standard. We're good to go. 2 months later, our reseller in Peru gave us a call. So, well, guess what? The same vehicle in Peru? No, it's not. It's totally different. So what we had to do, and fortunately our team from Big Data helped us, looked at the data and had a look. Said, okay, what are we getting from these engines? And what we learned, in South America, when that part of South America, Toyota are selling the new generation Hilux, but with the previous generation engine. Obviously, because of local market constraints, maybe with the Euro 6, the diesel condition in that part of, in Europe, in South America is not what it might be. What did that mean for us? It meant 2 things. We learned, and we went, oops, don't assume anything. But more than that, it meant we were able to advise our resellers and customers to say, right, if you're in Europe or Australia or Africa, you've got a Toyota Hilux Bucky, this is what you're going to get. This is how to connect to it. This is what the vehicle's going to tell you. This is what Geotab's going to tell you. However, if you're in South America, this is what you're going to get. And it creates that global experience and knowledge and sharing that data. Global customers and fleets. This starts to come together again when we start looking at the global fleets, right? PepsiCo, you've heard mentioned Pepsi a couple of times today, and it's a perfect example because it is so good. Been with a client of Geotab's for just over a decade, if I remember. Initially started US and Canada, and then in 2015 started to roll out to Europe, Latin America, and Africa, fortunately. As you can see, 17 countries. The challenge that we had because of that rollout, 20 different languages, 12 different time zones, more than 35 different vehicle makes, models, ranging in age from literally brand new to more than 20 years old. Regional and local challenges. For example, working hours in Germany, totally different to working hours in Greece. Road regulations, speed limits and all those things, different in Albania than in wherever they are. What we're able to do, 2018, I think we finished implementation, working with our regional offices around the world, but also with the resellers in those places where we didn't have it. Geotab Africa was integral, obviously, an integral part of that for South Africa. We finished that off. We're currently monitoring in excess of 80,000 vehicles for that fleet, working really, really, really well. Why am I telling you that? Again, relating back to that Toyota Hilux thing. Our global experience and knowledge, the stuff that we get from talking to our resellers and customers in that part of the world, means that we can talk to someone like PepsiCo with a global fleet and advise them accordingly. We know what we're talking about. How does this affect you? Well, actually, this brings me nicely back to what I started with in the beginning. Okay. So what? What does it mean to you that I can track a vehicle, I can put a snowmobile in the Antarctic? All right? What does it mean to you that I can tell you which Toyota Hilux you're driving in and what it's going to get for you? Well, actually, it's part of the learning thing. Okay? We learn, so you learn. I mentioned that you're part of of what we do. Colin, I think, mentioned if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be successful. And this is critical. We only get as good as we are because of the questions and the challenges you set us. So I'm setting you a challenge in return. Talk to us. We want to hear from you. Talk to your reseller. Talk to Geotab Africa. Talk to us. And us being the Geotab family, engage with us, ask us the questions. Obviously, you want to talk face-to-face, you're going to talk to your local reseller, but engage with us through the portals. We're online, we're all the social media ones. Give us the challenges. We want to be able to help you, and we want to work with you. Thank you very much.